Here's what happens when a 26-year-old people pleaser gets promoted to an executive role. Within the following 12 months, they're going to put on 50 kilos in weight worth of stress. They're going to burn out. Their mental health is going to suffer. Their personal relationships are going to suffer. This is what happened to me. Now, I'm going to show you in this video the exact process and the exact system that I built to get me out of this and to really turn my entire life around. And I did it by ditching all of those vague and fluffy leadership textbooks, courses, and theories and building my own system, one that removed my fears, one that guaranteed the best possible outcome to any situation that I tackle at work, and one that 10x'd my career growth. Let's go through it. Now, you need to understand that the first roadblock, the first barrier, is that subconsciously there are fears that influence everybody as how they show up as leaders at work. And for me, I was very much on the left-hand side of the spectrum here. I was a nice leader. That basically means I was really friendly, I was a conflict avoider, and I was a people pleaser. And it all manifested from this idea that I had a fear of social rejection. I had a fear that I was going to be disliked by my team if I was the one that had to deliver the hard message. And so those were subconsciously influencing every single action that I took. On the other side of the spectrum, just in case you may know someone or this could relate to you, is having a fear of failure. It's a fear that if you make mistakes, you're going to lose clients, you're going to lose reputation, you're going to lose career growth. And that manifests as a perfectionist, or you might procrastinate, or you might be seen as a micromanager. And so irrespective of where you may fall on this spectrum, where some of these fears may influence you, the ideal is here in the middle. A kind leader is clear, number one. And number two, they have a balance of high care and high expectation. And that is what we're going to try and solve and aspire towards in this video. Now, where these fears manifest and impact come from this idea of two gaps. And I want to show you this down here. 99.9% of leaders have good intent, irrespective of what words come out of their mouth or what they do. In their own internal dialogue, they have good intent. They do want the best outcome. But what happens is their fears stuff up what comes out of their mouth and what they do with their hands. It has such a power over how people show up at work, it's crazy. And so if you have a fear of rejection or a fear of failure, look at this number one here. This first gap is going to widen, okay? It's going to lose the intent that we had in the first place. The second thing it's going to do is, as a leader, you're going to be in really tough situations. You're going to have to give some constructive feedback. You're going to have to hold people accountable. You're going to have some really tricky team meetings where people are upset. You're going to have to say no to people. And so there is a very big difference between what you say and do and what other people see and hear. And when emotions start coming at play, triggered by these fears, again, it's just going to make that second gap completely open and broad. And so what we're going to do is we're going to close these gaps. So by closing gap number one and gap number two, you become that ideal kind leader. And let me show you the system that I built. Now, I spent over 12 months reading hundreds and hundreds of books and making thousands and thousands of words worth of notes. Even getting to the stage where I condense things down super clearly so I can understand it in a way that I'm satisfied with. And after all of that research, I found out that it doesn't matter what happens at work. I look at something and I think, that's one of my 15 scenarios. So you can pause the screen and take a look if you like, but I was able to map out the entire leadership universe. Whenever anything happens at work, it falls into one of these 15 categories and nothing else, okay? The way that we've color-coded it is green just means a positive connotation, red is a negative connotation, and yellow is your more neutral. But the idea is if you can observe something and have a scenario that you can link it back into your brain and then a strategy on how to deal with it, what that allows you to do is it allows you to be fair between your employees, consistent every single time, day on day, week on week, month on month, and also come up with a strategy that guarantees the best possible response that you can have as a leader that's best for you, best for the team, best for the business, best for culture, best for innovation, best for growth. And that's what we're all about here. So once you've worked out what scenario, what you're looking at falls under, then what we want to do is tackle, well, what are our options? And the options stem back to those three fears. For me, I'm going to talk from my experience. I'm going to talk about being a nice leader. So I had this fear of rejection here, people pleasing, really common fear. I worked as a teacher when I first started my journey in my second career from investment banking. And in that career, that was what I got promoted to a deputy principal in a high school. And naturally, working with educators, we're really nurturing people and we gather around nurturing people. So it's more common to see more nice leaders within the education industry. And this is what I personally really struggled with. Now, when I'm a nice leader, the two gaps that we talked about before, they're going to widen, they're going to broaden. And what's going to end up happening is unintentionally, I'm going to have a manipulating interaction when I see something. And what that means is let's say, for example, I need to tell an employee to really step up their game and arrive to work on time. If I'm a nice leader and I'm having a conversation with you, it's going to come across as me being quite nervous, me skirting around the issue, me saying, we're really good workmates, okay? But I need to also tell you some feedback. I'm going to default to using the shit sandwich a lot as my feedback model. All of these things are manifestations of a fear of rejection. And what ends up happening is I'm manipulating you to do better. The way I'm manipulating you is I'm blurring professional boundaries. I'm talking to you as if I'm your friend because I don't want you to dislike me. And what's going to end up happening is over time, you're going to feel good about that conversation that you weren't really taught off if you're the employee. I'm going to feel, thank God I had the conversation. But what ends up happening is very quickly, let's say the next day or the next week, that behavior is just going to revert back to where it was. Nothing's going to change. And then for me as a leader, I'm going to rock up the next week with the same fires popping up. Then I'm going to get stuck in a rut. I'm going to be in survival mode. I'm going to feel so emotionally exhausted during the day, take all of those burdens home and burden my friends, family, and relationships with it. And I'm going to rot on the couch watching Netflix, and this cycle is going to continue. I'm going to order Uber Eats 5 nights a week, and I'm going to feel sorry for myself and enter that victim mindset. This is what happens when, as a leader, you let your fears overrun you. Okay, I'm not saying it's easy. It's really, really hard. Okay, it's really, really hard to overcome these. And I'm going to show you how I do that in a moment. But this is what happens when you let fears run free. On the other side of the coin, if you're a perfect leader, so you have a fear of failure, you're also going to manipulate your team in how you speak to them. And you're going to do that indirectly by blaming them, threatening them, or intimidating them to change. But again, that's only short term. They're going to just revert the next week back to their original behavior, and then you're going to enter survival mode. What we want to do is we want to work in the kind leadership section. And that is where we make influencing interactions. So influence is the opposite of manipulation. And an influencing interaction as a kind leader is that perfect balance between high care and high expectation. And so what happens is when you use kind responses is the desirable actions from that employee are going to sustain in the following week. So you're going to have a conversation, and what's going to happen is the next week they're going to keep repeating that adjusted behavior moving forward. That's what you want. And so what happens is you're going to start to stack these influencing interactions. And what that means is over time there are less and less and less fires to put out because you've really clearly articulated to the team as to what you want to see. And for you, you're no longer in survival mode. You're in thrive mode. You're celebrating with the team all the amazing KPIs that you're hitting. You're celebrating with the team all the amazing goals that you're achieving. For you in your own career interests, you're going to go up. You might get a raise, you might get a promotion even further up, or you might be ready to go for another amazing job. You can't do that in survival mode. Only in thrive mode are you going to be able to live the career and the life that you want to live. So once you've got these options, and again, we're aiming for kind, what do? We then take the 15 scenarios, we commit to being kind, and we're now going to apply our strategy to it. And what we're going to do is, kind is that balance between high care and high expectation. And I like to use the word charisma to define what it means to be someone with high care and high expectation. We can all see someone who's really charismatic. It's a hard word to define, and this is how we define it here. Kind leaders are charismatic leaders. And so for kind leaders, but also for nice and perfect leaders too, it's really important that the way that you come across as those is only by the 3 things that you can control in a conversation. And that is the words coming out of your mouth, how you sound to the other person, and the body language that you're using, which could be facial expressions, hand gestures, posture, and positioning. And so for all of these 3 things, the way that we work with our clients to turn them into kind leaders with a balance of high care and high expectation is we give you exact frameworks in words, vocal tone, and body language. But we also don't want you to be robots too. So we give you variants of everything so that you don't repeat yourself every single time the same situation comes up. Because your team is going to very quickly think, geez, Anthony only has one way to respond to something. That's good because to them it's consistent, but to you, you don't want to sound like a robot, so we give you variance. The other thing it is as well is we want to sustain your personality. We don't want to turn you into someone that you're not. So once we've got our strategy, in life and as a leader, things go wrong all the time. So we're going to need to have some troubleshooting strategies. And so there are 3 ways that things stuff up as a leader. Sometimes humans make genuine mistakes. Let's say, for example, I say a word that causes you to be defensive in a constructive feedback meeting. That's a genuine mistake. And the fact is I love making genuine mistakes because it reminds the other person that we're human. And that journey of reflecting on a mistake, reflecting on, hey, I could have shown up better in our conversation, actually is a way to also strengthen trust and respect in your relationship. So it can be really used to actually help you in a way. And so when you make a genuine mistake, we give you an undo strategy. If you are addressing something with an employee and you're not seeing anything change over time, well, then you need to have an escalation strategy. Where are you going with this? Is it going all the way up to performance management and firing? Or are we going to also have other options to help you change it in a supportive way? Okay. The other thing too is most of the time, hard conversations at work come from three things. Emotions are running strong. The stakes are high because things at work could be happening. Promotions might be up for grabs. Clients may be up for grabs, things like that. So emotions are running strong, stakes are high, and opinions are varying. If I'm having a conversation with an employee and I need to address something with them, we're going to have two completely different sides of the story that we're going to tackle in. And that just leads to an argument. It leads to disagreement. It leads to defensiveness. And when all that happens, emotions can very quickly derail a conversation. And so we need to have a re-railing strategy to re-instill a sense of safety in our conversations. And that's something that we do too. So when you've got all four of these things working in this system, not only does it beat any fears of failure and fears of rejection, it helps you produce the best possible outcome. Then I've got this diagram over here that you're welcome to pause and take a more detailed look. But what we have as the main issue for leaders is they don't think in a long enough time horizon. In a day, you might have 100 or even 1,000 micro interactions with an employee. Those interactions are, again, one of these 15 scenarios every single time. Now, if I'm starting here, and this is a map of my day, anytime I make an interaction that's kind, so that's influencing, good direction, green, we're going to go up. Anytime I make a manipulating action that's governed by my fears of failure and fears of rejection, that's going to be a manipulating interaction. We're going to go down. What happens is when you stack these micro interactions over time, that's what defines you as a leader. That's what defines your team culture. That's what defines your team's productivity. And so with this system, even if you get it wrong, even if you stuff up, remember, we've got an undo strategy. So there's literally no way to stuff this up. You will always guarantee making an influencing interaction. Have a look at this top pathway here. If you stack influencing interactions only, you become one of those rare leaders that lead with high influence. They're astounding in their culture, retention, and productivity, and that's an effective leader. What ends up happening is most of the leaders that we really struggle to work with, people think they're high manipulation down here. They make bad decision after bad decision after bad decision after bad decision. Actually, they don't. They're rare for a reason. And if you look at it on a sideways angle, this is just the classic Plinko board, if you've heard of that before. High manipulative leaders are rare. And because they're rare, they get fired very quickly. What ends up happening with most of the leaders that we find really, really difficult to work with is they're very unpredictable. Remember, most people have good intent. But I guarantee you, a boss that you've worked with that you found incredibly challenging, they blow hot and cold. Their mood changes all the time. One minute they're really, really friendly. They want to support you. They want to help you. The next minute they're screaming at you and they want to blame you for things. That high unpredictability, 1 minute you're influencing, 1 minute manipulating, really causes a sense of instability in the team, which then manifests in standards dropping and the team just not becoming engaged. So remember, the whole goal of this is to aim to become a high influence leader. You want to be seen as a leader at your workplace, but also a leader within the industry so that you can go and take any job you want in the future because everybody respects you for it. And that's the system that I built and I still use to this day to guarantee every scenario that I come across at work is an influencing one and allows me to stack them over time to become a high influence leader. And what I do is I work with my one-on-one clients to be able to install this from them on a plug and play basis so they can replicate these results too. Thank you so much for watching.